phrases. Um, we like in the capitalistic system. Majority of the markets and the institutions are based on very famous French phrase, laissez-faire, or which means the openness, the free market system. And in the free market system, there's a very famous economist, maybe you would read him. His name is Alfred Marshall, and he gave you this definition of welfare. Remember, we discussed a few times the wealth, welfare, and so on and so forth. And the definition of welfare was given by Alfred Marshall. And he compares the modern day market system into as the two pairs of scissors, you know. And he says that there is an upper blade and a lower blade. And if you want to cut something, you need both blades of the scissors working simultaneously. If one blade is there and the other is dysfunctional, it doesn't work. And by these two blades, he is using metaphorically demand and supply. So if we have the modern economic system, then if we split it in terms of relevance, 50% of demand and 50% of supply. And if you don't have the proper understanding of desire, wish, want, and demand, it means that you are failing to understand half of the economic system. So therefore, right phraseology is very important. And we had some discussion about it, that in the beginning, we have the desire and the wish. Well, I don't want to be very prescriptive to you and saying that, hey, this is right, this is wrong, but the common understanding of wish or the desire is that when you have something, when you fancy something, when you, maybe you are even making some castle in the air. So you are like daydreaming, right? But neither you are serious to fulfill it, nor you have resources to achieve them. But when out of different wishes, desires, you filter out some of the unachievable ones, or you just say, hey, I think I can live without it. And then the next stage you get is the want. In the want, you are seriously going to achieve something. You embark upon your journey to do something. For example, now you want to graduate, you want to do your bachelor's degree, you want to be. And then at some stage, you stick with your wants, you never change, you don't retract. And then at that stage, at a final stage, you also have the resources which you can spend. You have knowledge, you have skill, which you can reflect in the exam, in the assignments, different courses, that now you are able to obtain what you were aspiring. But if you ask some youngster who is still in the primary school and ask, what do you want to become? Oh, I want to get a degree in business studies. For that person, for that young child, it's no more than a wish or a desire. Want, then he or she studies and get a school certificate, the higher school certificate, and that become a source to get admission to the master's, to the bachelor's degree. So this is how we evolve, right? So wants are, if I have to write down, if I have to explain some of the characteristics, the wants are for both goods and services. In economics, the goods are those which are physical, tangible, touchable. They have all the physical properties which you study in physics. On the contrary, intangible, the services are intangible. The services are providing us some services, some kind of facilities, but they don't have those physical traits which the goods have. Even though the services are very important, very, very important. If you look at GDP of any OECD country, you will find that the biggest contributor to the GDP is always the service sector. Service like finance, legal services, education, health, these kind of things, which are non-physical in nature. Okay, if you look at the GDP composition, all the OECD countries, you'll find that about 40–45%, even more, come from the service sector, which is also called as tertiary sector. And then it's followed by the secondary sector. The secondary sector is basically where you produce something, right? But not the, and then the third contributor is called primary sector, which basically is agriculture and raw material things, right? Now I want to ask you, if a country is selling a lot of primary products mean which are extracted from the nature directly, the man-made role is very negligible, very less in them. For example, something grown given by the nature. It could be oil, it could be minerals, metals, all right? That's a primary sector. If you want to, if you are a economic planner of a country, would you like to sell the primary products or the secondary products? What would be your policy? If tomorrow you become finance minister or economic planner of a country, and you have a choice that we have lots of primary products, we get a lot of minerals from the crest of the earth, would you like to sell that to the other countries or not? Yes, sir.
What is secondary?
Secondary. Can you elaborate your, I agree with you, but can you?
Because when you sort of take the primary products further, then you can always like price them higher. And for example, like, well, of course, if you don't have any facilities to like take the product further into like a more finished secondary product, then maybe you should sell them to another country who can then process them further. If you do have the facilities in your country to process them, then you of course should also sort of boost employment because you need people to process them, and then price it higher because there's been more work like put into it.
Very well said. Very well said. I totally agree with you, but I will comment on your point a bit later. But very well said. Yes. Anybody else? So if you're an economic planner, what would be your policy? What would be your students who are following online? They can also come in the discussion. If anybody has written some interesting points, Seher, you can bring forward. But yes, what do you say?
Yes, definitely.
I totally agree with the gentleman when he said that the secondary products. Because when you are selling the primary products, basically you are negating the industrialization or the economic growth of your own country, and you're rather helping some other country to do it. Because when you are extracting some raw material, you employ people, yeah? But if you don't process that raw material in your own country, you are not generating employment in the secondary sector. And if you don't do it, then your industries will not develop. If the industry doesn't develop, there's no insurance company, there's no banking sector, there's no legal sector, there's no health sector, basically. So you are not following the evolution. Like the humans evolve, we have the theory of evolution, economies also evolve. And the economy always evolved from primary, then to secondary, and the ultimate pinnacle, which you reach the stage, is that you develop your tertiary sector. I haven't seen any country in the world yet which is so-called OECD, rich country, and where the tertiary sector is not developing much. No. This is why sometimes we get confused or nervous that should we call those countries developed countries who are still relying on the sale of primary products, even though their per capita income is very high. So in other words, I'm asking you, would you consider, there are many West Asian countries in West Asia, there are those in the Gulf countries where the per capita income is very high, one of the highest in the world. Qatar, Kuwait,
Isn't Norway?
these are very rich countries if you look at the per capita income. But would you call them developed countries?
Isn't Norway actually one of the great country that invests income is huge part of the income is coming from primary and investing into secondary?
Yeah. So would you call them developed countries?
Norway?
Yeah, but Norway has a lot of oil, but it also have the processing of those oil thing.
Yeah, that's the thing, that they process the oil and
sorry
and they
folks, you can't
also
hear,
invest
unfortunately. Yeah.
They also
So that's the point. I get your main idea. That we need to be very careful. We need to be very particular when you are defining. When you're defining the developed and developing countries or underdeveloped countries based on per capita income, you should be very careful that is it even the right criteria of this? Because there could be some less developed countries and their per capita income could be very high thanks to because they are selling a lot of primary products. So there is an economic evolution process, and that includes that we move from the primary to secondary and then tertiary. And ultimately a stage comes when the secondary overtakes the primary and then the tertiary overtakes the secondary, so that we have the largest contributor to the economy is the tertiary sector. When your service sector is so advanced, then you can see that you are really following the economic evolution process. Some more characteristics of wants. Wants are unlimited, are they? Do you have the limited wants? Who is very, very saintly and very divine kind of person? I have very few demands. I get nirvana, no, I don't get nirvana. I've been trying for the last 50 years to get it. I haven't got it. Please tell me how to get it if you know the algorithm to get nirvana. That's a nice phrase, algorithm to get nirvana. Yeah. Yes, I will never write it. Okay. So the wants are unlimited. Do you believe it, or you don't believe it? Wants are unlimited. Is anybody saying or anybody thinking that wants are limited actually? Why are they unlimited? A single want is satiable. You can satisfy one want at a given time. We take one want, like for example, you want to get a bachelor's degree, and then eventually you study hard, you generate your intellectual resources, you spend your time, energy, your focus, your concentration, and eventually you get it. You don't have to get bachelor's degree again, So some wants are satiable. You can satisfy them, don't you? So if you take want by want, not as a collective bundle, then you can satisfy your wants one by one. Some wants are recurring, like food. You cannot say that, oh yes, I had my breakfast, so my want is over, so now I don't need food. You will need it, won't you? So the wants are recurring in nature, they reoccur. Of course, it depends, the recurrence frequency could be from a few minutes to decades. When you eat food, you may be hungry again. You're famished sometime if you don't eat for next 5-6 hours. But for example, if you buy a house, that can stay with you for decades. So much so that you can actually inherit it to your third generation. isn't? So wants are recurring, but the frequency of recurrence could vary from the nature of want. Varying nature of wants. Some wants are more indispensable, they're more pressing. Some wants have the quality of being postponed, isn't? Do you agree with me? Wants, their propensity or their intensity or the urge to fulfill them varies. Agree or not?
Agree.
You can post. Very well said. You know what? I really want to have Ferrari, and I want to have it right now. Sorry, that was just. But I agree with your point that wants, they have different the different intensity, and this point is so important that we can make the category of wants. Do you know we distinguish different things into necessities / essentials, comma, comforts, comma, luxury. And the gentleman, what he said, this Ferrari example is in the third category. I'm yet to see somebody who says that, hey, you know what? Having a Ferrari is a matter of life and death for me. If I don't get Ferrari next 2 hours, I may die. Do you get my point? But on the other hand, if you don't get water, if you don't get food, if you don't get clothing, shelter, right? If you are outside and it's minus 40 degree, like it happened with me a few times, that when I came to Finland in 2010, I have a spirit of Columbus inside me. I like to explore some new places and the new ways. And when I came to Finland, it was 2010, January end. And I think some of you remember that 2010 has been the coldest year so far. I haven't come across that such a cold year later on. Minus 35, minus 36, minus 32 was a norm every day, almost every day. And I used to live in Mulijärvi, Keltonmäki, and I used to work in University of Jyväskylä, and then one day I thought to discover a shortcut, and I went 5 kilometers ahead of Lauri, and I know it was minus 36 degree, and I was not even wearing properly the clothes which one should wear in such a hostile weather. So yeah, so if you don't have some wants, if you don't get them, it can be dangerous. Yeah, it's a matter of your life, your dignity, and so on and so forth. So that's why those wants which are very pressing, they are called essentials or necessities. The one which make you can live without them. They are not something indispensable, but if you find them, if you get them, it makes your efficiency better. And third is luxury, which doesn't really make you anything better in terms of efficiency. Maybe you have your collars up. Maybe you feel more pride. As we discussed last time, that it's more like to keep with Joneses. You want to live with Joneses, so you must have an expensive car. Or what we call as demonstration effect, when you want to show off, basically. So those wants which are stronger in intensity, essentials, and as their intensity goes down and some other factors come in the picture like show off or these kind of things, then you move from comforts and to luxuries. Do you agree with me that you also see the things in 3 brackets, in 3 categories, something very essential, then something which can make your life better? If you have them, and if you don't have them, of course, the hell will not break loose if you don't have them. But if you have them, it's good for you. And then the third category is absolute show off. And is it so that these three categories, now you have to come in the discussion. Is it so that these three categories of commodities or these wants, they are across the board? So whatever is essential for me, whatever comfort for me, whatever luxury for me is true for everybody. And whatever is a comfort, luxury, necessity for me was for me 20 years ago. So do they vary across person and across time? Same person, your definition or your categorization of essentials, comforts, luxuries change. And then with the person to person, profession to profession. In certain professions, certain things are essentials. But in the other profession, the same thing could be a comfort or a luxury, for example. You're a student, you don't need a car. Well, depends if you need it. But if you're a cop or a doctor, you must have it because you can be called on some emergency. You're called and you say, you know what, I have to change 3 buses to reach the patient. So I want you to discuss a bit more about it. My point is that does these 3 things, necessities, comforts, luxury, they evolve over time and they change over person to person? Please say something. Otherwise, I will ask you difficult questions. Either you answer by yourself or wait for my questions. Yes?
In some countries, having a mobile phone is a luxury.
Yeah.
And, like in Finland, it's more like a necessity.
That's true. That's true. In some countries, mobile phone is still a luxury. Yeah, that's true. Anything else? How about you see yourself that how you as a person evolve in terms of necessities, comforts, luxuries? Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We are older, we want devices, and when we become older and older, we want house, cars, what's always change with our while we grow up.
Yeah, that's right. When you are a student, you may be having very minimalistic approach because your resources do not allow. I want to see when you get the proper jobs, how much money you save from your first salary. Because there'll be so many suppressed wants, you know. So you walk along in the city center and you see certain things and you say, you know what, I can't get them. But once you get the proper job and you have a lot of money in your pocket, you will try to grab them, to fulfill your suppressed wants and needs, won't you? So, and once you become used to of those things, you will never come back. Then those things which you were once upon a time dreaming, so I can call them as luxuries, they might become your day-to-day routine consumption things. And then they might become, you become so addicted, so used to of those things that they become your necessities.
People are nowadays even downshifting, trying to go another way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? They go away from those things.
Very few people.
Yeah, but it's more and more people nowadays, I think.
Yeah, maybe this post-COVID thing will bring a lot of changes in our lifestyle. Yeah, but yes, you're right. Some people are coming back to this back to nature thing, but still we need to know that, understand that people are still very materialistic. They want to grab power. Once they have these resources, they want to fulfill their, the potential wants. One more thing, which before I forget it, necessities, comforts, and luxuries, right? Which one of them are expensive?
Can you repeat once again?
Necessities, comforts, and luxuries. Which one of them are more expensive? Luxuries. But do we die without luxuries, or there's a more chance of dying without luxury or without essential? So then essential should be more expensive. See this.
Labor theory of value introduces itself.
So yeah, you're right. But if you see from this point of view, that if you don't get food, you see it's not good. But if you don't have, I still use this example of Ferrari. I think you will survive. But by that rationale, food should be more expensive than Ferrari, isn't it? Well, why not?
Luxury products have to keep a high price so that it keeps its prestige. You know, if you start seeing Ferraris like all over the place, then it doesn't keep prestige, and everyone has it. It loses prestige.
Mm-hmm. So we use these two concepts. I want to use these two words. Hope you remember. One is called value in use, and the other is value in exchange. Value in use is the relevance of something, which is more relevant for you. And value in exchange is the price of something. And the price comes because of the demand and supply forces interactions. People demand more. Why they demand more? Because as you said, they have some prestige. You want to show off. You want to be those haves. Once you have it, you want to show it to the have-nots that, hey, look, I have it, you don't have it. Isn't? So this is the value in exchange. But if you look at the value in use, that shows that how important that thing is. If you all go by the value in use, then you should produce more hospitals, more food, more medicines. But the fact is that we don't do it. Of course, we produce medicine, food, and all that clothing, but we also go beyond. And we try to produce the people's aspirations and their wishes. Because as I said, that wish, want, behavior is very important in economics. So the value in use and the value in exchange may be different. The value in use. Do you like tiffins? You know, when you come to work or you come to school and you think that, hey, why should I eat outside? Number one, it's expensive. And number two, it may not be so healthy. And you choose to bring a tiffin with you. Do you bring it? I bring it. I never eat in the restaurant, at least during the daytime. What if this tiffin is made of gold? What if your lunch box is made of gold? Would you bring it? Because those people who use lunch boxes, they're usually not so rich that it should be made of gold. So this is where we come in the conflict, that who is more important? A dying man, a person, needs water, not gold. Yeah? But water is not so expensive. But gold is very expensive. This is where we have this conflict between the value and the price. The value is the relevance, and the price is the scarcity of resources and unlimited wants. Unlimited wants, but the mean to achieve them is limited. Yeah? Make sense? So this is how the value and the exchange comes in the discussion. The present wants are more important than future wants. Do you agree with this? Oh, sorry. The present wants are more important than the future ones, or not?
Because immediate luxury need is less important than, for example, present, the future necessity. Like you won't buy a Ferrari without any food in your fridge.
I think today we are Ferraritized because every example that we have is about Ferrari. But I can make your discussion easy. I can make your point easier. Let's talk about one kind of product. Let's say food, necessity, right? Food today is more important than food after a year. Yeah, that's my point. Let's have a discussion based on this kind of premise. The present needs are more important than the future needs. The future wants, yeah, I'm using them interchangeable. Agree or disagree? Some points from you. I agree and I disagree both with this point. Anybody who disagrees with this?
If you think about it in such a way that you also have food today, so you like, you spend all your money on it and then you don't have food like after a year.
So if you give so much importance to the food today, and it could be possible that, as you said, that you may end up spending resources unwisely on food too much. And because of the nature of the food, you can't store it for a very long time, and then the food rot. So we waste our resources. And when we waste our resources, remember that curve, production possibility curve? We go down. So the whole growth process get halted, right? And one more reason I disagree to some extent with this statement is that if you give too much importance to the present wants, then you will not think about the future generations. And already we are doing it. We are not giving too much. We are extracting so much of resources unmindfully, frantically, that there is a danger that what type of earth we are going to leave for the future generations. Look at the earth's average temperature. Look at the average height of the sea. There are certain islands which are, it is expected that they would extinguish because they will be overtaken by the sea level at some stage. Diego Garcia is one island, and then for example Maldives, and there are many small islands which already are, and this is because people have given too much importance to today, as if there's no tomorrow. So we are not caring much about the stakeholders. Do you know the stakeholders? The future stakeholders. Remember, when you talk about the stakeholders of the economy, may I ask you, in this today's world, who are the stakeholder of our economy or society? Whose stakes are involved?
People in general.
Sorry?
People of the world in general.
People in general, okay. So the society, it means the communities, societies, yeah? You said something. Somebody said something.
Process all the fabrics, the plants. Okay,
the nature, you mean?
No, the people.
People, okay. So
the owners.
All right. The producers, the consumers, those who consume, then, sorry, those who produce. Then there are the state is a very active stakeholder in the economy, right? You see, state is a very big spender of money in the society. If there is no state, there are many facilities which will be, especially in Finland, state is super active, isn't it? I mean, everywhere there is state. As a controller, as a player itself in the economic matters. But what I'm trying to say is that there are stakeholders which are visible, but then there are also some stakeholders which are invisible. The invisible stakeholders are your future generations. They don't exist, but they will exist at some stage. Some stakeholders are very vocal. If you cut the wages of labor, they will be on the roads. But if you cut some trees, there will be no revolt. So there are some active stakeholders and some are passive stakeholders. But if these stakeholders who are so-called passive, you keep troubling them, then eventually the nature would reflect very angrily, very furiously. And we can see that in many countries in the world where natural havocs or pandemics or epidemics are coming up, are those countries where the nature has been very much mistreated. And the nature doesn't reflect, doesn't cry, doesn't reflect you, doesn't react to you immediately, but it takes time before it does. And once it does, it strikes very disproportionately. Yeah, so the nature can be very revengeful. So that is the stakeholder. But that stakeholder could be more passive or more silent stakeholder. The wants change and they expand with development. Of course, when there is less development, you have less wants, but as the wants, we see a technological development, we see the organizational development, your wants increase. So I think you can do that. And then I want you to have some discussion about this word called microeconomics. Remember, in this course, so far we have been discussing already microeconomics, but at some stage we shall also study macroeconomics. So what do you think is micro and what do you think is macro? And the micro?
Micro is micro and macro. Macro is about whole world and micro is about country, if I remember.
When you talk about the country's GDP, when I say that the Finland's GDP is so many trillion euros, am I talking about macro or micro? Macroeconomics.
Same as aggregate demand.
Yeah.
Macroeconomics.
Yeah.
Microeconomics looks at a firm's economy. It's like a smaller sort of thing. You look at supply and demand. And
yeah. So when you see the unit of analysis, who you want to analyze as one firm or one person, then it's more like a micro thing. But when you aggregate them, then it becomes macroeconomics. Even though the distinction between micro or macro is very blurry. For example, when you are analyzing an industry, is it micro or macro? Because industry is in between a firm and the overall economy, yeah? So it's difficult to distinguish if it is micro or macro. But in micro, look at the word micro, means very small. So the unit of analysis is very small. When you write your thesis and you are interviewing some people or some firms, Or in my case, when you are doing very big data analysis, lots of financial data, that's more like a micro study, right? Yeah, but when you combine all the micro studies and you are able to conclude something for the overall sector or the economy, then it becomes macro economics. Microeconomics, as it says, is a branch of economics that studies how individuals, households, firms make decisions to allocate your limited resources so that you are able to make use of them in the most efficient way. When you are looking at the price of one commodity, what should be the equilibrium price of this mobile phone? What is the minimum cost of this mobile phone? Where does the resources come from? You know, so when you are discussing these things, then you are talking about the microeconomics. But when you talk about all the products, everything, when the price of, let's say, when the price of milk increases in the city, it's a micro problem because it's a one commodity, right? But if there's an overall shortage of commodities and service and the prices of almost everything is going up, it becomes a macro problem. Inflation is a macroeconomic problem because inflation includes almost anything and everything which we talk about. But if the price of one commodity increases, it's not inflation. So there's a thin line between micro and macro, and certain things are good in micro but bad in macro. We encourage people to save. Yeah, we encourage firms to save. But if all the individuals and all the firms start saving, what will happen?
The economy will suffer greatly.
Yes, because then who will buy products? If you start saving, if everybody starts saving, every firm starts saving, it means that then people will not consume. Because when you get your salary, it's a limited resource, right? You split it between consumption and saving. And if you're saving more, it means you're consuming less. And when you consume less, what will happen? The revenue of the store, Prisma or K Market, will go down. When it goes down, what will happen? They will not order to the supplier. And then what happened? The employment level of Prisma and the suppliers, companies will go down. There'll be more unemployment. And what happens? We are going towards recession. But we also encourage that individuals should save, but at the micro level. But at the macro level, if everybody starts saving, then that may not be very desirable. As you said, that may not be so good for the overall economy. Okay. I want you to read this economic efficiency, and then let's have some discussion about it. I give you 5 minutes to go through this slide, economic efficiency, and then we have some discussion about it. Seher, if you want, you can pause the recording for some. Well, I can do from my end as well. Remember the phrase we use called banana republic? Have you heard this phrase? So why they earned this bad name of this banana republic? Yeah.
Because they have only one product.
One product, yeah. So just selling banana to the rest of the world. Yeah. Yeah. And this is tagged to these Latin American countries, right? Whereas in Asia, yeah, Central American country, yeah, yeah. But if you look at Asian countries, of course, there are some laggards, sleeping, but many countries in Asia, if you look at the Southeast Asia, for example, it got independence. Most of the countries got independent in 1950s or 60s. But look at the economic success. Marvelous. see the success which Singapore, Hong Kong, Taiwan, these countries have obtained in very less time after independence. Remarkable. South Korea, for example. Japan, until mid-90s, Japan was doing wonderful job. Of course, Japan is now under a recession for many, many years. And then look at China. Miraculous. This is, you hardly find any example as what you see in China. And now the new emerging countries like Bangladesh, Vietnam, marvelous. Laos, Cambodia. I mean, they are the new economic powerhouses where the manufacturing is huge. If you go to Marks and Spencer and you see some random thing and see where they're made, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Vietnam, marvelous. So the Asian countries, but when you go to some store, you hardly see something made in Peru or in Venezuela or in Colombia. Do you see? How often you see? What are the chances that you go to a store and you pick up something and it would be manufactured in Panama?
Oil produced in Venezuela.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the only thing they produce most.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. All right. So, and that is also something related to efficiency, that the Asian countries, I'm not talking about the whole of Asia, but majority of Asia, they became efficient. They got economic efficiency. And economic efficiency is comprising, yes, anybody want to talk about? Yes, sir?
Yes. Chinese.
Asian drama. Have you heard about Asian drama? Yeah? There's a very famous book by Nobel Prize winner economist Gunnar Myrdal. I think he was a Swedish. And he has written, she, not he, she wrote this book called Asian Drama. If you ever get a chance, PDF in the gray market on internet, please try to get. Yeah.
You wanted to tell that Chinese economical achievement actually became at a price because Chinese workers work mostly with manual labor, get very low payments, very low salary, and are mostly socially insecure. So that was the price of Chinese achievements. They just sold the labor of their inhabitants to other countries.
Very good point. Very good point. I want to ask you something, and I hope my students who are following online are listening to me. I want to distract you for some time. I want to take you off the track a little bit now. After listening to this gentleman, do you think that China can continue to remain as the global factory for the future? Because if you look at the last few years, a decade or more, or even more than 2 decades, China has been almost a global manufacturing hub. Everything, all the major companies, they have their manufacturing in China. My question is that, will it remain in the future also? Or do we need to be more diversified or something? What do we need to do? Think about it and then give me some answers, because that is also concerned with the economic efficiency. Yeah, let's think about it a little bit more, and then we have more discussion. And of course, I'll give you more chance to speak. No, it's nice. I like to see, I want students to be more active, chatty.
Can I say something?
Is Mohammed, you want to say something?
Yes.
Okay, if you say, because your friends can't hear you, but if you say a bit loud, I can hear and I will explain what you want to say, basically.
Oh, yeah, sure. Okay, let me put on headphones, so I think it will be much easier. I think China will will remain for some time to be a manufacturer of the world, because they have a very good chance of like the labor expenses is so low because of a massive population, so they could so this, because of this reason, manufacturing expenses will stay so low.
Okay,
So
I got your point, Mohammed. Mohammed is saying that China would continue to remain a manufacturing hub, or like a global factory, because they have lots of production capacities, and secondly, they have very cheap resources. What do you think?
I was going to add there only that who knows what is going to happen. Right now, the Chinese economy is booming. If you check how they came back from the corona situation, they are doing really well. And that's also slowing down the other world. But what they're doing right now, they're making loads of different kind of deals. They are buying different harbors around the world. So it's not only about manufacturing. They are buying harbors, and they are giving money for different kind of, projects all over the world, especially in the Africa and stuff. So,
and Latin America.
Yeah, and Latin America. They need to be really careful when they're taking money from China, because China can be hijacking the companies and so on, even whole countries, by giving them money.
So are you trying to say that the rest of the world didn't know how to do the business, and the Chinese knew how to do the business, basically? Yes.
Americans to make from China. So it would drastically change if something happened.
How many of you would vote for Trump if you were in the US? I know many of you will vote, but even though you don't want to, because that's what happened when it was last time voting, that people were not taking him seriously, but he won. Did you get my point? I mean, before the election, who would believe that he would win? But then he won, didn't he? It didn't came by army coup. He was democratically elected. So you never know. Yeah. So that's a good point you raised, that China has a lot of resources. And moreover, China knows the art of trading. They know the art of business, how to do it. They're not just traditional buying and selling thing. As you mentioned, that they are buying harbors. And as we have discussed a few times, that they have bought the mountains of minerals and resources in many countries in the world.
I don't know what they're doing next. For example, they are planning to build underwater tunnel from Helsinki to Tallinn. This Rovio guy, what's his name?
Who?
Rovio, Peter. Who's the CEO of Rovio?
No, I don't know.
Well, he's the one who is, planning the whole project, and the Chinese government, or was it one of the Chinese companies, was one of the biggest operators who wanted to offer money to build the tunnel, but they didn't take it because they are afraid that they want to affect politically on the project.
Yeah, interesting. So if you look at the economic efficiencies, we broadly have two categories, productive efficiency and the allocative efficiency. If you want to become economically efficient, you need to keep these two things into mind. Productive efficiency basically means that you are making the best use of your resources and the right resource at the right place. Right? If you are utilizing the resources, but you have very bad organization, that the right person, the people who should be in the finance, they're doing marketing, and those who should be doing marketing are in the HR, then even though you are using the resources but not optimally. And this example, which I'm giving you, that you have the resources but you don't know how to put the right person in the right place, that is basically the allocative efficiency, that how you allocate your resources. Are you distributing your scarce resources in the best possible fashion? And when you use them in the best possible fashion, the result is that the cost goes down and you are able to produce more and cheaper and increase your revenue. So when you are economically efficient, it means that you are giving importance, you respect your resources, you made the best use of them, you allocate them on the basis of specialization, based on their skills, so that you are able to produce the goods and services at the least cost. And when you are, because see what, when you are an entrepreneur, you don't have control over the price unless you are a monopolist, right? So for you, the price would be given, the price would be determined by the market. But what you have control over is that you can reduce your cost. Make sense? And how do you reduce the cost? If you are making the most optimal utilization of your resources, as I said, right people at the right job, proper resource allocation, proper scheduling, people who are working in the factory. It's not that many people are there at one point and there's hardly anyone in the factory in next hour. So these kind of small things can make your efficiency level up. And then macro, I think we discussed about it. Now, I want you to have some discussion about one important tool of macroeconomics, that is the monetary and the fiscal policy. I know we discussed about it, but I want you to have some more discussion about monetary and fiscal policy. What do you think they are? How do you execute them? What is the intention of monetary and fiscal policy? So for some time, I want you to think like the finance minister of the country, because they are the people who are deeply into these two policies, monetary and fiscal. And which one is better according to you? And students who are following online, they can also start building up their ideas about fiscal policy and the monetary policy. They are extremely important tools. An economy can collapse if you made bad decisions through monetary and fiscal policy. So you can think, build up your points, and then we have some discussion. I'm pausing it into the fire. So you are basically dwindling between two evils. First of all, you are suffering from recession, and now you're suffering from inflation. That's a problem with the inflation. And inflation has one more, monetary policy has one more problem. And that problem, if you want to see, please Google recession in Japan. If you make monetary policy so much, you rely too much on monetary policy, the result would be that you may technically motivate people to borrow more, but psychologically, you cannot. Does it make sense? You can take the horse to the water, but you can't make him drink. Why I gave you the example of Japan? Because in the extreme recession, people are psychologically dented and they believe that there's no future, all is lost. no hope, because they have suffered a lot from recession. And when you are trying to give them some freebies, some brownies in the form of low interest rate, nobody comes. Nobody takes you seriously. Say, who comes? Japan had negative rate of interest for over 15 years. There was hardly anybody outside the bank asking for the loan because they don't want to invest. Because they say that, okay, if we invest, what will we do? We produce, okay. We recruit people, we produce output, nobody will buy from us. That just adds to our inventory. Do you get my point? So when you don't see the business prospects, when the business psychology is so much crippled, then you don't fall in the trap of these technical attractions. So I would say that in the countries which are chronically suffering from recession, they don't even take monetary policy even seriously. They say, hey, it's another freebie offered by the state, and nobody takes. So the problem with the monetary policy is that it can overreact, it can have strong side effects, or it may have no effect, like in case of Japan. I must ask you, I must advise you that some of you look for some article on Japanese recession and see the utter failure of monetary policy in Japan. I personally am very upset with the Japanese economic failure, because when I was young, in my early teens, Japan was a miracle. Japan was a success story in Asia. Yeah. What a country, what an economy. And that has economically collapsed in many ways. All right. And to get rid of recession, or rather depression, because when the recession is chronicle and it stays there, we call it depression. So monetary policy has not been successful in bringing Japan out of depression. But please do, somebody search for some article on Japanese recession and the failure of monetary policy and share it in the forum. Okay, thank you very much for your patience and your participation. And next week when we meet, we shall start some proper established theory of economics. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We can